Hey, welcome to Sequentially Yours, Initially Mine. This is the show where we look at this week's number ones and find out which ones are terrors that flap in the night and which ones are just terrible. Alright, if you haven't guessed already, we're going to jump right in and start with Disney's Darkwing Duck. After several years, it is returning to comics. I have been a huge fan my entire life, as I'm sure many of you have, and yeah, you will fall right into this. If you like Darkwing Duck, you will absolutely fall right into this. I couldn't help but read it in the voices of the characters, Jim Cummings and Christine Cavanaugh, and, everybody that all came through. That being said, this show is not about, is something good for the fans? This show is about, is it a solid number one? And the answer in this case is largely. While it doesn't specifically require that you need to have the particular information, it does take a while in order to figure out what's going on with a lot of these characters. If you're not familiar with Launchpad McQuack and Gosalyn and Honker and the Muddlefoots and all of that, then at first this might be a little difficult. However, as long as you have some knowledge of superhero tropes, it's not that difficult to figure out that, for example, Darkwing Duck is Drake Mallard. I hope I didn't give that away, by the way. Or that his daughter is aware of what's going on, or that Launchpad is his sidekick. You can figure these things out. That being said, it does, probably the only place that I would say it's kind of throws you into the deep end is with the villains. If you're not aware of who Megavolt is, or even more, and I don't really want to ruin it, but there's another villain that you can probably guess, but if you're not aware of that villain, then the surprise factor probably is going to be lowered a little bit. But you get the general idea, and basic plot-wise, it's a cool idea. Darkwing gets stuck in a new super prison filled with his villains, and he has a certain amount of time in order to hide before they start searching him out. It does give you a good rundown of a lot of his villains, including, Bushroot and, I can't remember who else was in this one, but trust me, there's a lot of familiar ones. And Taurus Bulba is in there. There's a lot of interesting villains in there. So yeah, if you like Darkwing Duck, you'll probably like it. There's also a couple pages worth of Gravity Falls preview if you flip it. So, worth the read. I enjoyed it. Next. Alright, speaking of being trapped somewhere where people are killing you, we have Killbox. Tom Riordan and Nathan Gooden, story and art respectively. Tom writes in the back that it's obviously become very popular to have the sort of Battle Royale style story right now, including Battle Royale, Hunger Games, etc. And he's trying to put his own twist on it. In this case, it takes place in LA, in a 4-mile square area. The characters have essentially signed up to this. They have a certain amount of time. It is very heavily regimented. It takes place in our regular world, but, only the very wealthy are able to see what's going on and watch this and take part in, choosing which weapons are available on what day or anything like that. And, the rest of LA is going on around them, so you have people murdering people for a specific but they can't explain it, and it has some interesting elements to it. That being said, there are a lot of characters, and we are not given time to like any of them. Riordan introduces both heroes and villains in this, and that's fine. The problem is that the villains, while compelling immediately, because it doesn't take much to show somebody not being human, our inhumanity is very, very clear, and when we see inhumanity, we notice it immediately, and that makes something... we become interested in it because we become fearful of it. That's easy to do, however, we don't like those characters, we don't want to follow them. We want to pay attention to them, maybe, but we don't care about what happens to them. The heroes, on the other hand, it takes a little bit more work to show a character's humanity. And because there are so many characters in this first book, we don't get a sense of anybody's, what makes them good, what makes me want to follow them. I barely had time to learn their names, and I have forgotten them since, as, kind of generic as they are. I see a lot of potential in Killbox, but for a number one, I'm not sure if I care enough to keep reading. I hope it gets better, I really do, and I think that the writer has done some wonderful stuff. The artist, it's not my cup of tea. I can see why some people would like it, but it's a little bit hard to follow some of this. That being said, the panels that work with really nice, clean lines work really, really well. So Nathan Gooden, well done on some of the panels, but a lot of it is just a little grimy for my tastes. If you're into that, great, good for you. You might just like this, but Killbox was not really something that grabbed me. Okay, next. Micronauts. This time IDW has gotten a hold of the license. You may recall that Marvel had the Micronauts license at one point as well. Honestly, it's a toy commercial. Well, Micronauts has always been supportive of a toy commercial in the same way that ROM Space Knight was, and several other ones that Marvel did at the time. In this case, this was a whole lot of not bad. The main characters are part of a crew of somewhat sketchy people that do somewhat sketchy jobs for somewhat sketchy other people. That's really what's going on here. It's kind of got a Firefly feel to it, but without the heart. And that's really what's missing in Micronauts here. And that's strange coming from writer Cullen Bunn. I expect his stuff to actually have a lot of heart generally, and this felt a little soulless. I was really hoping for something more out of this. I mean, yeah, again, it's based on toy. I'm not even sure if the toy line is still out. But that just means that there is so much that can be done with it. And again, going back to ROM Space Knight, which I'm rereading now because fun, that was a toy commercial, yes, but it was also one with a lot of heart. I bought into ROM. I'm not buying into these characters. That being said, the art, let me see here. Breakdowns by David Baldion, finishes by Fico Ossio, Max Dunbar, Jack Lawrence, David Baldion. Alright, so lots of people were involved in the art here, and art is not like writing in the sense that, when you see a movie with 7 writers, it's probably going to be bad. In this case, it actually came out pretty well. In fact, there are some really great effects in here art-wise. So if you want to see an interesting art book, Micronauts might be it for you. If you're looking for characters and plots that are going to be intriguing or compelling, probably not where you want to go. Alright. I gotta stop doing that. Alright. Vikings. This is, as far as I can tell, based on the TV show. That seems to be the theme for this week, by the way, is based on the TV show or based on the other property. It's weird how we've been getting a lot of theme weeks, isn't it? Anyway. I liked it. It was okay. It basically tells this story of a bunch of Vikings in England making a deal with an English warlord or king of some sort. There's a lot of interesting social things going on where the English, and some of the English don't appreciate that, for example, one of the Vikings is sleeping with an English woman, and that comes through, and it was okay. I liked it. I would say that the only thing that I had a problem with was that the pacing was a bit inconsistent. It had a lot of stops and goes. And I haven't seen the show, so maybe it mimics that. I don't know. But I shouldn't have to see the show in order to appreciate the comic. And I think it also, the title is Godhead. I'm not sure where they're going with that. If that's going to be the title of your first book, you really need to kind of make that work. I should finish the book and be like, oh yeah, Godhead. Okay, yeah, now I didn't get it. That being said, it wasn't bad. The art is passable. It looks sort of like late 90s art. And the characters are likable, but again, I feel like the show probably did a lot of the groundwork in creating these characters so that we could jump right into it. Which, no problem with that. Great, but again, it's not something that I'm sure I'm going to continue to follow. Alright. Over the Garden Wall. Now, I've been told by reliable sources that the cartoon of this is phenomenal. And you know what? Great! I'm going to check it out. I am looking forward to it. That being said, this comic is not phenomenal. This comic seems to assume that you have read the comic or seen the show, because the first part of it has a character that goes to a magical land, or maybe it's just in his imagination, chasing a frog, and I expected the Master Blaster theme to start playing. There's a sheriff guy, and a stuffed rabbit, or a stuffed raccoon, and a cat that grows up. Things happen, but none of those things have any impact. The character solves the problem in less than half, maybe a third of the comic. He experiences the problem and solves it, and never is there a sense of peril. Never is there a sense of need. It's just a thing that happened. And I don't know why I'm reading it, because it seems like it's a waste of my time. There's another story in here, however, that I think is a little bit better. It's about a girl who is waiting on her father and trying to kind of live her life. And, you know, it was a nice little thing that happened. But again, I don't feel like it had a purpose. I liked this character a little bit more. I felt for her. She seemed to have some sort of personality, unlike the character in the first one, but yeah, ultimately, no, this didn't work. I think Kaboom Studios needs to kind of look at this book again and say, alright, how are we going to make a book that can stand on its own, that is not just a supplement to a show for fans? If you're going to put it on the wall, if you're going to put it in stores, then make it something that is going to be accessible to people who like it. And make it clear you're from a cartoon series, because I had no idea. It doesn't say in here that I saw that's related to a cartoon series of some sort, other than the Cartoon Network logo, which is sort of hidden. Oh, and there's an Adventure Time story in here, which, whatever. I like Adventure Time. It was fine. But I forgot. Obviously, I forgot about the story, so it wasn't that great. But yeah, so let me know what I should be looking at, and more to the point, make something that I'm going to enjoy on its own. Alright, Aliens Defiance. This was almost my number one for the week, and it was pretty close. Aliens as a series is... eventually you start to get bored with it. I mean, I love it. I grew up on it. I adore the Aliens franchise, but let's face it, most of it is a survival horror story where people get trapped with xenomorphs. This is a little bit different, actually. It starts with that. The main character goes to a derelict ship with a bunch of corporate, like, literal drones, like security drones. Basically, androids, but not as advanced as Bishop or Kane was. There are xenomorphs on board the ship. There were 30... the only colonial marine, the woman, gets thrown into a cryo tube, and when she wakes up, she finds out that of the 30 drones, only 6 have survived, but they managed to wipe out the xenomorphs. And they have decided to violate their programming and start heading toward locations that Weyland-Yutani thinks that there are other xenomorph infestations, and wiping them out so that the corporation can't get a hold of them and bring them to Earth for study, or to use in weapons testing. That is interesting to me. We have changed it from survival horror to a race against the clock. It is now no longer people versus xenomorphs, it is people versus the corporation with the xenomorphs as the MacGuffin. That's a different take on this story. I am looking forward to the rest of this storyline. Aliens Defiance. I recommend this one. If you like Aliens, if you want to see something a little different. Alright. Moving on. All new classic Captain Canuck. This is the third time I have reviewed a Captain Canuck #1 from Chapter House Comics, and each time It seems to be trying to restart the story. Guys, either commit to Captain Canuck or move along. Seriously, look back on my video. You'll find 3 reviews of Captain Canuck. And you know what? He's not a bad superhero. I'm okay with, Canadian Captain America. That's fine. It's, Captain Canuck is a fine character. He is very Canadian in the best ways. I think that he could, there's a lot of time travel involved. They could really do something with this, but you gotta commit to it. Just pick a story, pick a character, pick a theme and a tone, and go with it, guys. As this is a number 1, again, as I've said in previous ones, it's fine. It's readable. I enjoyed it. It has enough there that if you as a reader are willing to commit to Captain Canuck, and they as a publisher are, you can probably enjoy reading this significantly. For a while. Alright. 4 kids walk into a bank. This was, I think, on Twitter, Kieran Gillen mentioned how excellent this was. It was him or Jamie McKelvey. Either way, they were right. This was really good. A crime caper in 5 parts. Black Mask Publishing. Another one that was a very, very close number 2 for this week. Not quite there, but it's interesting. The characters are compelling. The story is a little bit different from what you would expect. The humor is spot on. I mean, it manages to play with stereotype without necessarily having to actually engage in it. All in all, yeah, I hesitate to talk too much about it because I don't want to ruin it, and because of the way that it's told, honestly, I cannot do it justice. If you get a chance, 4 kids walk into a bank, check it out. Worth the read. Alright, so lots of stuff today, but eventually we get to a number 1. And that number 1 is Sabretooth Dan from Scout Comics. Writer is no, those are Scout Comics. C.R. Mountain is the writer and artist. I'll admit, the art is not really my cup of tea, but it works. One thing I will say for it is that at the beginning, the writer-artist mentions that he is sick to death of deconstructions of fairy tales, and I am right there with him. Don't get me wrong, I like a good fairy tale deconstruction. I loved Fables. I like a lot of the stuff that has come out in the past, but I'm tired of it. It's nice to see the beginning of just a fairy tale. And more to the point, the beginning of a straight-up hero's journey monomyth quest going on here. By the end of the book, we have gone through the call to adventure. We have gone through... we have potentially met a mentor. I'm not sure yet. But the character has definitely refused the call and then crossed over the threshold. If you are... if you're interested in the monomyth, I recommend watching the Hero's Journey, or listening to the Hero's Journey episode of School of Movies they recently came out with. You'll get a lot of information on kind of how it works if you're unfamiliar with it. That being said, I think that this has a lot of potential to follow that and to do so in a genuine way, while also providing us with a likable character and some good humor. Sabretooth Dan, as a character, I like a lot of, again, even though it's not a deconstruction of fairy tales, it does play with those concepts. For example, he appears to be a human with big teeth, who is being raised by wolves. And the wolves are kind of abusive, actually. Got kind of a Cinderella thing going on with him, kind of very limited in what he could do, forced to do all the housework to exacting standards, etc., etc., etc. However, he also points out that there's no use complaining because everybody knows wolves make excellent parents. I think that's hilarious. I think that's fantastic. There is just a lot of stuff going on here. The art is very sketchy, quite literally sketchy. But that being said, there's a certain charm to its simplicity, and again, I think that perhaps simplicity is not the right word there, because as the story is a lot more complex than it lets on, being a kind of standard fairy tale, the art seems to be a lot more complex than it lets on. And I like what's going on there, and I love seeing somebody take on an idea and make it their own without necessarily having to take the piss out of it. It's really great to see, and this was just a lovable book. There was something that I really just enjoyed reading about this, in a way that a lot of comic books I just don't get that way anymore. So, if you want something that is sort of ironically different, something that is going to let you feel that sense of wonder that comes with the fairy tale or with the monomyth heroic journey, without sort of any sense of irony behind it, and also a good amount of humor, Sabretooth Dan, I think, is probably going to be your best bet. I highly recommend it. And I'm going to check out Hench Girl, which apparently is also available from Scout Comics, and see what that's like, because that might be fun too. Alright, guys. So, those were the number ones for this week. I don't know what your opinion's going to be, but these were initially mine. Take care.